All right, everyone, let's welcome in a whole new ACC, at least when it comes to scheduling. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Best discussion, debate, and analysis, not because of me, but because of your participation. We appreciate you being here and invite you to join the show tonight. I will leave the link to join the show in the comments section. You have probably noticed that we have also left a link in the comments section, which leads you to a Michigan hype video that was released on the official Michigan football Instagram today that our guy Malachi, thank you for this, Malachi. You're probably not watching as a Michigan fan, but Malachi sent to me on Twitter today to alert me to the voices that were used on the Michigan hype video, again, on the official Michigan football Instagram account. And so, Malachi, thank you for doing that because you may want to check it out. We would invite you to check it out, even if you don't care for Michigan football. Just give it a listen and see if you recognize any of the voices on there. So welcome into the Voice of College Football for the next 2 hours on the ACC network. They are broadcasting the ACC schedule release for 2023. And what makes that different this year is that there are no divisions in the ACC. So Coastal Division fans, you're probably mourning because you've had the easy ride, the easy path to the conference championship games. Atlantic Division fans, well, you've got new life. You no longer have to sit behind Clemson and get blocked to Charlotte in an ACC championship game. We will, going forward, like the Pac-12 decided this past season of 2022, that the two best teams in this conference will play in the conference championship game and not the division winners. They've also gone to a 3-5-5 format. So what that means is there are three what they call primary opponents. You may want to call them rivals, but primary opponents that each ACC team is designated to play every year. So they play those three opponents every year, and then they split the rest of the conference. So you got 14 teams in the conference. So if you're Clemson, for example, you play three teams, and we will get to those primary opponents here in just a second. You play them every year, and therefore there are 10 other teams in the conference. The conference has split those teams 5-5 for each team. And so you just alternate playing those five teams one particular season. The next season you play the other five teams. Therefore, it guarantees that everybody in the ACC plays at least every other year. I think it's the way to go. The Pac-12 is doing something similar in terms of matching the 1 and 2 seeds in the conference to play in the championship game, but not necessarily this format. I would expect that the Big Ten and the SEC are seriously considering, and now with the Big 12 expanding to 12 teams, well, it's going to be 14 teams with Texas and Oklahoma still around this fall, that going forward, that we would see some type of scheduling format similar to this in all the other conferences. Because what these conferences want to avoid is sending, now that we've got the automatic bid for the conference champion to the college football playoff in the new world of the 12-team playoff, the last thing that these conferences want is to send a 4-loss team to the college football playoff. They also are tired of getting the complaints from fans and alumni and others that teams don't play very often. We'll take Clemson, for example, again. They play Georgia Tech out of the Coastal Division every year, and then the other game rotates amongst those other 6 schools. So therefore, Clemson only plays Duke once every 6 years. North Carolina once every 6 years, and on and on and on and on. So there are a lot of student athletes that never play a particular team in the conference, and to play a team in your conference that you're supposed to be competing against for a conference championship, to play them once every 6 years is ludicrous, and has been ludicrous for a long, long time. But scheduling has become more complicated in that way because these conferences are expanding beyond belief. We will have 16 teams in the new SEC and 16 in the new Big Ten. Therefore, if you don't expand the conference schedule, then you are having a ton of teams within the same conference that don't play each other, which again is ridiculous. So we will keep an eye on the ACC network, and we will feed you the released schedule. We have already known of the non-conference matchups in the ACC. What we have not known is the 5-5 matchups. We already have the matchups of the primary opponents. Let's check those out. And while we do this, I would like to invite anyone who wants to call the show, and you can talk about anything concerning college football. It doesn't have to be about, does not have to be about the ACC scheduling release, but I've just dropped a link in the chat, so please join us here at the Voice of College Football, and we've got a full crew here. We are broadcasting on the main channel, the Virginia Tech channel. You probably didn't know we had a Hokies channel. We do. Please check it out. Miami channel, Florida State channel, Clemson channel, North Carolina channel. All right, all good stuff. So if we take a look at the primary opponents, this is what we find. I don't know if I can blow that up in such a way that you can actually see that. There we go. We'll try. So here's the deal. You see Boston College there at the top. Boston College every season will play Miami, Pitt, and Syracuse. Clemson every year plays Florida State. That makes total sense. Georgia Tech, you may not be ingrained in the Georgia Tech-Clemson rivalry because outside the ACC, few know about it, but Clemson and Georgia Tech need to play, and then NC State is the other primary opponent. This was released, these primary opponents, in June of 22. So it's been about 7 or 8 months ago. And I don't recall as to whether I found a hole in this scheduling proposal. I'll have to give it another look to see if maybe they missed somewhere along the lines. But let's get to the phone lines. We've got a couple callers on the line as we await the schedule release in the ACC. I don't know whether to necessarily, depending on your perspective out there, to consider our buddy Will as a representative of the ACC. There's quite a debate about that. But for me, no, Notre Dame is an independent, of course. Will, how you doing tonight?
Doing good, Mark. Doing good. Excited to see these ACC schedules get announced. Of course, Notre Dame's ACC schedule is already announced. I would say it's tougher, a little tougher than it's been in other years, but I guess it's not too bad.
The Notre Dame schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it did strike me as pretty tough.
Mm-hmm.
But their schedules used to be really tough before they made this ACC pact.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say, who do you think has the toughest primary opponents, Mark? I mean, seeing Florida State's is pretty tough if Miami gets its act together, which is a big if, but because they have to play Clemson and Miami, Florida State does.
So at the time that these were released, I did a video on this. And so I did designate who I thought had the toughest draw and the easiest draw and all of that. I eyeballed it, but I also went to the records over the previous 4 or 5 years and looked at it that way. So, yes, I think off the top, we've got Florida State has a tough draw. Duke's draw is not necessarily easy with North Carolina, NC State, and Wake.
If you're a Duke fan, you want to play the other North Carolina schools, I'm assuming, though, right? So
sure. Yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah. Duke and Wake are big rivals. And, of course, Duke, North Carolina, I guess, in football are rivals. I thought, and again, this has been 7 or 8 months since I looked at this and posted a video, but I thought that there was someone in here that really stood out as having an easy draw. And for some reason, I'm thinking that was, yes, look at Wake.
Mm-hmm.
Duke, Georgia Tech, and Virginia Tech.
That's pretty cozy. Yeah.
That is nice.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Mike Elko has got to hit Duke going, so that's not as hard as that's not as easy as it's been in the past couple of years. So
Sure. But overall, what in terms of what you would
mm-hmm.
expect long term, that's pretty light.
Yeah.
That's probably the lightest right there. You know, I think if you're going to look for difficult schedules, you look for Clemson first, and then you look for Florida State.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Virginia Tech is pretty favorable.
Yeah. Virginia's is fairly favorable.
Yeah.
Look at Pitt's.
Pitt, yeah.
Look at Pitt's.
Pitt is the
Boston
easiest, I
College,
think.
Virginia
No.
Tech. Yes, it's the easiest.
Mm-hmm.
It's the easiest right now, and it looks to be even long term one of the easiest. Like, who out of those three is ever going to be dominant?
Yeah, I don't know if Tech can get back to the Beamer years. Probably. I mean,
Yeah.
we'll see. But besides that, I mean, BC was good with Matt Ryan, but besides that, yeah. Dino Babers really only had one good season. So, and I guess McNabb back in the day they were good with, but yeah, Pitt's definitely pretty nice. Well, do you know when these are going to get announced, Mark? I'm kind of.
So I've got the ACC network on right now.
Yeah.
I have no idea how many people that are watching us have the ACC network that can be following along, but they are just going through all the non-conference games that were already announced and we already knew about. So they've got a big 2-hour special here. So we're just going to follow along. I don't know exactly when they're going to release it.
Yeah, I'm going to have to log into my parents' cable package for that.
There you go.
So looking at the Irish's ACC schedule, I'm a little worried about the Louisville game if Jeff Fromm gets it going because we're playing them right before USC. So I'm a little worried that could be a trap. I mean, it shouldn't be, but that's the game that scares me the most.
Yeah, I do think that Notre Dame's got a pretty rough draw out of the ACC. Mm-hmm. Now, again, this is the ACC, and the ACC's been down, and until proven otherwise, I got to say it's the worst conference in the Power Five right now. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, Notre Dame draws Clemson, Pitt, NC State, Duke, Louisville. It's a tough draw.
Yeah, a lot of them are on the road, too, although Duke's not really a hostile environment, but NC State and Louisville will be up for it.
No, you might have more Notre Dame fans at the Duke game.
Yeah, that's fair. That's definitely likely.
And then I do find it interesting that you guys get going in week 0.
Yeah. I mean, the double bye is nice, but I wish we had one of the double byes before one of the big 3 games.
Yeah, that didn't work out for you.
Yeah.
I would think that, of course, Notre Dame is locked into the USC back and forth, home and home that sets it at the end of November when they play at the LA Coliseum, and back in October when they play in South Bend, and similarly, Stanford is a late season game. And then I would guess that the ACC hands Notre Dame, or I'm sure they work with them to some extent to say, this is what we're looking for, and this is who we're going to give you this year, and this is when we would like the games to be played. But you would think that Notre Dame would have had a little bit more control to try to work those buys in their favor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I did a look at this schedule, and I had a lot of people tell me that I didn't know what I was talking about, that Notre Dame had an easy schedule.
I don't get these. I feel like it's tougher than a lot of SEC schedules. I don't know, but
Well, I do know that it would be tough to find too many teams that play Ohio State, USC, Clemson as something close to that as their toughest 3 games.
yeah, for sure. For sure. And I cannot wait for one of these schools, once the playoffs start, to go to Notre Dame in 15-degree weather for the playoff game. And I'm just very interested in seeing that. Because I know Notre Dame obviously won't have the bye. So that's what I'm just really looking forward to that. Like if one of these schools that says Notre Dame schedules is soft goes to South Bend for a playoff game in 20-degree weather, see how they can actually fare, see how tough they really are.
We were about to bring in Talkis Pitt to see if he wanted to join the conversation, but we'll go to our guy. Jordan's here.
What's going on? What's going on?
Good to see you, Jordan. Thanks for joining us.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to talk about, because this was really interesting when it popped up, and it was something that had been had kind of been circling about in rumors. So the Monday primetime matchup that the ACC just released for week 1 is Clemson and Duke.
So this brings back
Monday
reminders of Clemson, Georgia Tech last year.
Yes.
Although Duke, of course, had a really good season last year.
What do you think about that? Because it's interesting because the ACC is trying to isolate its biggest, obviously, at least currently, its biggest brand, in a primetime spot. But as far as matchups go, and this is no disrespect to Duke, because Mike Elko has done a fantastic job in year 1, and they were clearly showed a level of competence we haven't seen from Duke in at least several years. So, but it's still, Duke is not one of those names, especially in football, that draws a ton of eyes. I know. I'm just really interested at the logic. And this applies to the Georgia Tech game, last year as well. But it's really strange, the ACC leadership and how they're choosing to promote the conference, and how they decide to, divvy out the schedule. But I just thought it was interesting.
Because I believe that this would only be the second consecutive year that they've gone to a ACC conference game to fill that spot. Before they've highlighted the ACC most notably against the SEC. Like I can think of an Ole Miss Louisville game and others. And so with so much attention on big non-conference matchups that opening weekend, and them using the Atlanta Mercedes-Benz Stadium for that Saturday and then Monday draw, it's kind of strange, that they've gone to an ACC game now.
Yeah. I guess putting it, I guess they didn't. I know Ole Miss, that Ole Miss Louisville game, and was that last year or 2 years ago, where Ole Miss absolutely blew them off the field. I don't know. Maybe it was just we don't want to get embarrassed week 1 by the SEC or something. I don't know, but I feel like there was, if you're going to choose a conference game, I would have done it a little bit differently. But hey,
Florida State LSU helped the ACC out at least.
Oh yeah, it did for sure. That was a great game. We're all wondering, is like, were those two teams really good? And it was a slugfest, and Florida State got up early and LSU tried to mount that comeback, fell just short, or are these two teams like just really, really awful? And turned out they were both exceeded expectations. So, hey.
And I do believe that they're putting those two again on a Sunday night game.
Yes.
So the ACC is in a good position from that standpoint. They get, whatever big games are on Saturday. that are going to be multiple games in each time window. But those exclusive Sunday night, Monday night games are ACC 3 out of 4 spots.
Yeah. And so it'll be interesting. And I think that matchup is I think it's in Orlando. I know
Yes.
it was in New Orleans and now it's in Orlando. So it's kind of a pseudo neutral, but pseudo home and home type series. So that'll be fun. Both teams they have a lot of expectations going into this year, both returning quarterbacks. I'm excited for that one.
Talk is Pitt is jumping in here to join the ACC conversation. Talk is Pitt. How you doing?
Doing pretty good, Mark. How are you?
I am doing well. What's going on?
Oh, not too much. Not too much. I've already taken a look at Pitt's schedule format, and I think we definitely have one of the easiest draws, like you guys said earlier. That doesn't mean I like the teams we got stuck with. Syracuse is a team that has not beaten us, or has only beaten us 5 times in the past 20 years. Virginia Tech beats us more than any of those 3 teams that we are getting stuck with. I personally would have took Clemson, Miami, and maybe Wake Forest over Boston College, Syracuse, and Virginia Tech. And I only say Clemson because every time we play Clemson, that's not in the ACC championship, it's one hell of a good matchup. I wish we got stuck with Clemson every year instead of playing them once every 6.
Hey, well, I mean that'll change. This. I know Clemson and Pitt don't play this year, but they will play next year.
Definitely.
So hey, it's better. Obviously the old model where you didn't play them. For, like you said, once every 6 years usually. Now you're at least guaranteed to play. Every team in the ACC in a 2-year span. So. That'll be good. It's just announced that Florida State and Clemson will be a Week 4 matchup. Saturday, September 23rd. So obviously that's the matchup that everybody is circling as far as the biggest game within the conference. I think this was actually a pretty good job by the ACC. I know on the ACC show that we did. Is that last week or a couple weeks ago? And you had Pigskin Pete and Jason on, and they were talking about whether they should schedule this matchup early in the season to kind of give both teams an opportunity, the loser an opportunity to kind of build some momentum and increase the likelihood that a potential ACC championship matchup has playoff implications. So. Honestly, I think this is a pretty good job by the ACC. I actually tended to agree with Jason, and I think this is a pretty actually strategic move by the conference as far as positioning this matchup, because it gives both teams. The worst thing you can do in the college football playoff era, especially in the 4-team college football playoff era, is lose late. So it gives the loser an opportunity to kind of build back that national prominence.
Yeah, I wish Pitt would have scheduled Notre Dame the first game of the season. And I know Will's
coming home.
Yeah, Will's sitting there smirking because he thinks they're going to have an easy time with Pitt. Well, you should ask UCLA that question.
Hey, that was a good win. I wasn't expecting it. It was looking like UCLA was going to run away with that one.
I didn't have any fingernails after that game.
I bet.
But yeah, I'm actually the Notre Dame game is the game that I have circled on my calendar because Will even knows this, and me and him have had discussions before when I did a show with him. Pitt fans absolutely do not like Notre Dame one bit. Not one bit. And that's the game we're looking forward to the most, even though we play West Virginia, but that's West Virginia. It's not really exciting to beat them anymore. Maybe Cincinnati. Oh yeah, I forgot we do play Cincinnati this year at home. So maybe I'll actually go to
Talk
that.
is Pitt. Talk is
Yeah.
Pitt. It's not exciting to beat West Virginia.
Nope, not anymore.
You haven't played. You did not play them for what 12 or 13 years until last season, and you beat them by that
7.
much. And now you've kind of discarded them as like an FCS school.
Well, I mean, I've always looked at West Virginia as an FCS school, but like beating West Virginia doesn't carry the same amount of weight that it would carry as, let's say, we beat Clemson, or let's say we even won the ACC. You know, we could go and play Penn State, and that would mean more beating them than it would West Virginia.
Yeah, from a quality standpoint, I totally get your point.
Yeah, that's what I
Virginia
mean.
And Pitt is a great rivalry.
It is a great rivalry, but it just doesn't carry the same weight that it used to.
Okay.
That's what I'm getting at. I'm not saying it doesn't mean anything. That's not what I meant. It's just the quality of beating West Virginia is gone.
I mean, that's an interesting perspective because, you know, for me, you know, if you polled like Clemson fans and you were like, would you rather beat Notre Dame this year or beat South Carolina? I guarantee 99% are picking South Carolina every time. We'll take that L to Notre Dame every single day of the week.
Well, you guys have
losing that rivalry game.
Yeah, but you guys have played every single year since Pitt and West Virginia has stopped.
That's true.
That's what I'm getting at. Like, because of how long it's been, I'm not saying it doesn't mean anything. It means more to the old guys than it does to the young kids. And I'm an old guy. I'm in my mid-30s, believe it or not.
So, Talk is Pitt, you made the statement that Pitt hates Notre Dame, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Do the players and the coaches feel that way? Is that just a fan?
Narduzzi feels that way. I know that.
Okay.
Well, no, definitely Narduzzi, and from the guys that I work with, because I believe there's 2 Notre Dame fans at my job, and they even said back in the day playing Pitt and Notre Dame was just, it was just one heck of a game. You got you got fights breaking out in the stands, on the field, fans going back and forth, and it's just nowadays. I look at teams we play more often, and we have played Notre Dame a lot since joining the ACC. Actually, bring me on to my next point. Pitt signed a contract with Notre Dame to play them every year for the next 12.
Actually,
so Pitt will be playing Notre Dame every year for the next 12 years.
Ooh, Wake Forest at Clemson. That's going to be an interesting one. I think Wake Forest. I think people are going to be sleeping on Wake Forest next year, but I actually don't think they're going to be that bad.
Who's going to be the quarterback?
That's what I was going to ask.
They're actually really high on him. I am blanking on his name right now, but he came in when Sam Hartman was out and looked really, really good. And
Griffiths.
Crap, I can't remember.
Mitch Griffiths. Yeah, that's correct. I knew it was Griff. It was one of those.
But didn't Wake Forest lose their whole entire offensive line?
They lost a lot. They did lose a lot, but they return a decent amount of talent at receiver. I know A.T. Perry is gone, but they have some dudes. Take it from me who watched Clemson get absolutely torched. Honestly, A.T. Perry was not the best receiver in that game. It was, you still have guys like Jamal Banks, and I believe Taylor Morin is back for another year. So no, Wake's is still going to have some weapons on the perimeter, and Mitch Griffiths, I think they really like him. They're going to be a really interesting team next year. They still got to fix the defense. That's been a trend. It hasn't been very good over the last few years, but.
A lot of our super seniors, our super seniors have returned. I think we had 11 super seniors that are all returning.
Yeah, a lot on the offensive line, right?
Yeah, we have 4 offensive linemen returning. The whole defensive line's returning. Now, the biggest question for us isn't even going to be on offense.
Isn't Cansey gone?
Yeah, Cansey's gone.
Thank God.
So basically, every single starter for Pitt on both offense and defense last year were injured at least 3 games or more. So every starter missed at least 3 games or more, with the exception of Marcus Minor, but he graduated because of eligibility. So with that being said, who do you really define as starters? The people who started at the beginning of the season, or the people who were, in the trenches down the long run? Because that's 2 different answers.
It's true.
To me, that's going to be our biggest asset. Now, the linebacker core took a very big hit. We lost most of our linebackers, but we got linebackers in from Florida, LSU. Couple other people have transferred in, and then we got this. I can't remember his name. Why it's drawing a blank. Derek Davis. He was a safety at LSU / running back, but he's going to be playing running back because we lost Izzy Abanikanda, and we need another big guy up front. Because Derek Davis is about 220 pounds. So I definitely think Frank Cignetti has got something going on, got something cooking at Pitt. Not saying we're going to win the ACC. I'm predicting we're going to win 9 games this year again. I think the days of mediocrity are over.
I could totally see it, especially if Cignetti and Dracovic find some of that magic they had, and back in 2020 at BC. That'll be interesting.
Oh yeah. Well, see, that was the problem with Dracovic. He didn't have an offensive line, 2021, 2022, and he only had one person to throw to. And I kind of wish that person would have transferred to Pitt, but he decided to go to the NFL.
He would have been dumb to come back. Zay Flowers is, he's going to be special.
Mark, have you seen Zay Flowers play?
Have I seen Zay Flowers play?
Yes.
In the NFL?
No, in Boston College.
Oh yeah.
That kid is just unbelievable.
He can play a lot.
He's special. Yeah.
He reminds me of Antonio Brown without going crazy.
I see it. I mean, he does have some of those. He does have some of those qualities, and yeah, I'm glad he's not going to be in a BC uniform, because he was a nightmare.
BC didn't deserve him.
Yeah, but hey, I can't wait to see what he does in the league. I think he's going to be a star. He was phenomenal.
Who do you guys think was the most underrated player in the entire ACC?
Most underrated. That's interesting. I mean, Riley Leonard at Duke. It's easy to think of, but I thought Riley Leonard had a pretty phenomenal season. Who else? I'm trying to think of like a non-quarterback, because that's kind of cheating.
I mean, that was going to be my answer.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, yeah.
Yeah, Riley Leonard. I thought, honestly, he carried Duke.
Mm-hmm. He was a big part of their run game too. I thought that was the most impressive, because Duke had. Their running backs are fine. They have some decent players, but it was nothing special. But they were still one of the best running teams in the conference. Partially because Riley Leonard was such a threat with his legs, and he had opportunities. He was a big part of that offense.
He tore Pitt up. I mean, I thought what Drake May did to us was bad, but God dang it.
Oh, yeah.
I thought we were going to lose that game because of Riley Leonard.
I said Jahar Jordan for Louisville. I mean, Austin loves talking about his Cardinals, and he had some breakout. He had some huge runs.
Yeah, so that's a great pick. He was huge. Another Louisville player, Tyler Hudson, wide receiver. He was pretty phenomenal. He's got it seems like Louisville every single year has like one like slot like legit track speed that is like just impossible to guard just every single year. But yeah, Tyler Hudson
be a
was
Tutu
really
Atwell.
Tutu Atwell was great too.
Braden Smith just announced today that he's entering the transfer portal.
He did. I think it seems like he's been there forever. I think he's a grad transfer, which is why he's allowed to enter, because I know the technically the portal window is closed, but that's just for non-grad transfers. I think grad transfers can leave whenever they want. So interested to see where he goes. He could be a really nice contributor. He's here a long time.
All right, folks. I did see NC State already released its schedule in full, so hopefully we'll be able to catch up with some of the full schedules coming out, and we'll get those posted.
Yeah, NC State. Yeah, they're a team that's really, really intriguing. You could really say that about a lot of the teams in the ACC, because there's been a lot of turnover on a lot of the rosters of these teams. But you know, NC State is no exception. You know, and bringing in, you know, the transfers that they have, and you know, bringing in Robert Anae from Virginia to be the offensive coordinator in a year where, you know, after a year where their offense really underperformed.
Yeah, I mean, anyone was a upgrade over Tim Beck, and I think they got a good one in Anae.
I mean,
Yeah,
do you think
you have personal experience with Tim Beck?
I mean, do you think it was easier when Devin Leary went down for half the season?
Well, they weren't particularly good when Devin Leary was playing. That's the problem. They didn't have much of a run game. They weren't able to replace the production of Emeka Emezi at wide receiver. They were not a very I mean, they were, you know, fine through the first few games, but you know, anytime they played a competent defense, they really had, you know, trouble moving the ball. I
can't. NC State's a thorn in Pitt's side. We can't beat them in anything. It doesn't matter what sport it is. Not up until basketball this year when we beat them. And by the way, Jordan Bowman, congratulations on the Pitt and Clemson win. That was did you watch that game?
Oh, of course I did. Yeah.
Oh my God!
I watched Clemson basketball because I don't enjoy life, and I like to get hurt. But hey, this year is finally paying. We get those years like once every 5 or 6 years where it really pays off, and Clemson actually has a decent season. So I'm really happy right now. 10-1 in the ACC, you can't really ask for much better. Best start.
Yeah, Brad Burnell going to get that extension, and then back to.
Yeah, I'm just going to enjoy this year and then be prepared to complain about Brad Brownell when PJ Hall and Hunter Tyson and all them are gone, and we're back to square one. That'll be
a
circle of suck for Clemson basketball.
Speaking of sucking, what about Notre Dame, Will?
Well, I'm glad that Mike Brey's gone. I'm glad we're going in a new direction, and hopefully we'll perform better. But I think it might be a full rebuild because
Notre Dame's at the bottom of the ACC right now.
Yeah. Has this slipped into a basketball conversation while I've not been paying attention?
It somehow did here. It wouldn't be an ACC show, like, you know, centered show without slipping into some basketball talk, like unintentionally.
No, well, I mean, hey, Pitt is doing very good, so that's kind of my fault right now.
Hey, when I know a couple guys that have an ACC football podcast and they call it the ACC, or they call it Basketball Conference Podcast, but it's a football podcast.
I listen to them, yeah. They do good
stuff.
I
have never heard of them.
Yeah, Mike and Joey, yeah, they do a good job over there. And you know, Tech fan, well, they're two Tech fans, one a Georgia Tech, one a Virginia Tech fan. So,
yep,
Sea-Dog.
Yeah, but it's stuff. Make sure you check out their podcast. It's a hard undertaking to cover 14 teams, but they do a really good job and they know their stuff. So, and I always like to give them a listen.
I definitely got to give them a check out. I don't know. Most of the people I listen to, as far as YouTubers and podcasts go, aren't even in the ACC, because it seems like the ACC's YouTubers and podcasts consist of mainly Miami fans.
I know you don't want to deal with those. So
we're trying to do something about that.
I'm just glad Pitt beat Miami 2 nights ago, and they were ranked. We should be ranked.
Mark, you got to have Sea Dog on for a show. That would be great.
Sea
Oh my
Dog.
God.
Who's Sea Dog?
Georgia Tech
The
fan.
only
Yeah,
Georgia Tech fan to ever
All
exist
right.
on YouTube.
Sea Dog.
He's
Well,
a riot.
our guy Joey that Jordan just mentioned, he used to come on all the time when he was writing for SB Nation. That's where we got Mike and Joey started. They used to be on here all the time. They're good guys.
Yeah.
Actually, I got started from you, Mark.
You did.
Mhm.
Yeah, you were the first person I discovered, and then I realized there were no Pitt fans, and I decided to be the
Be
first
here.
one. And it seems like
Yes.
after that, that's when they all started coming out of the woodworks.
I would start a pit channel if I had the resources there. But if I had a nickel for everybody that said they met somebody on here or got started, then I'd be a rich man. But
Yeah.
it's nice. That's nice to hear. I like that.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean,
Starting
Pitt
careers.
doesn't have a big presence on social media, and it's hard to get the fans engaged in Pitt sports without them trying to be negative. And when I mean negative, you could be undefeated and they'll find the littlest thing to complain about. Will's laughing because he knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
We are going to force a fifth in here, I think. We'll let Larry in and see what he has to say. Larry, what's going on tonight?
Larry?
Hey guys, how are you? Oh,
Doing well.
oh my gosh. It's the guy who's dating 3 different conferences. How do we
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello, Larry.
So it's going good. I'm curious to find out. Sorry, I forgot your name again. You're just right of Will. Oh my gosh.
Jordan.
Jordan, yeah. Sorry, Jordan. I've talked with you a few times. Out
Oh,
of
yeah.
curiosity, I am who do you think the sleeper and the best team in the ACC is going to be this coming year? If you put bias aside,
Oof.
what are your projections?
Well, dang! Since you told me to put bias aside, I was going to say Clemson for both. No, but I'll start with sleeper because I guess that's that's probably the one that's the hardest to pick. Man, I'm going to say Louisville, and
Boo.
no, yeah, but before, I knew that was coming. I'm going to say Louisville because honestly, I think when you look at their roster and you look at especially on the defensive side of the ball, they have a lot coming back and they have a lot of talent. And with Jeff Brom coming in and bringing in his system, I'm really interested to see what kind of stuff he dials up because I actually don't. I'm not really worried about Louisville putting up points next year. And, you combine that with a lot of returning talent on defense, a defense that was, tops in the country and in a lot of statistical categories, sacks, tackles for loss. They're going to be a really tough out. And they're finally out of the Atlantic scheduling model where they were having to play Clemson and Florida State and all those Atlantic teams every year, and they don't play Clemson or Florida State, I believe, on their schedule this year. So they combine that with a lot of talent and a new defensive system. I think they're a team that could maybe win 9-10 games, and so I think I'd have to pick Louisville.
Okay, that makes sense if they're skipping 2 of the premier brands. And I mean, I'm going to be honest, like, I'm obviously a Pac fan, but it's nice to see the AC. It's nice to see Miami and Florida State starting to make strides in the conference.
Okay.
I know as a Clemson fan, I'm sure you like the dominance, but you also need, like in the past, you need some other teams to represent. And Florida State beating LSU kind of validated to me the ACC a little bit more this year from an outsider's point of view.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, you get a lot of discredit, it was a fluky game. LSU was the, this and that. And it's, but if it happens to any other conference, the SEC gets to wash it by the wayside. But when it happens to them, it's a different story. So
they
I was
didn't
really
want to be there. So this
Yeah.
person was hurt. Yeah, I know.
You know, my Utes lost to Florida. They lost, and so it was nice to see, FSU beat LSU, because it's one of those, okay, well, if you're so great, then why did you lose to the third best team in the, so some of those arguments can go by the wayside. So it's really nice to see the ACC, in particular Miami, starting to do better. I have no confidence in Mario Cristobal, though.
I am going to cut in to play devil's advocate on that game, just to say, when all was said and done, and I thought that was an important game for the ACC, and more so for Florida State and Mike Norvell coming off 5-7. But when it was all said and done, they were very comparable teams that played a 1-point game in New Orleans.
Right.
So good.
Yeah,
win
but
for
it's,
the
I mean,
ACC,
if you come down to it,
they didn't exactly make a statement in the game.
Right, but you could say the same thing about Florida, Utah. Utah's on the 6-yard line, first and goal with 30 seconds to go.
Florida was one of the worst teams in the SEC, and Utah was the Pac-12 champion.
Well, how did Florida go to Tennessee, and give Tennessee fits?
They didn't give them as many fits as maybe you think they did.
The score was 5 points?
I think
it was like a 10 or 13 point game.
Yeah.
It was a somewhat competitive game. It wasn't like down to the wire.
I don't know. I mean,
I'm just pointing out that Florida State came into the season is obviously a 5-win team the previous season, so not much expected. So that was a huge win for them and really good win for the ACC. However, as it all shook out, Florida State was really the 2 seed in the ACC, and LSU was more like the 4 seed, the 3 or 4 seed in the SEC.
Yeah, you can make that argument, but it's always hard when you're talking about week 1 results, because it's it's something that I've heard a lot of coaches mention. I know Dabo has said it a bunch. The first game of the year is always the hardest one for, just because you get more time, obviously, but you really have no idea what to expect, especially in the age of the transfer portal, and just so many teams can overturn their roster in one offseason now. You really don't know what you're getting, and all the coaching movement. It's a really tough ask to prepare for an opponent that you really last year's film is pretty much irrelevant for, and you could say that about Florida State. And honestly, I think that's a testament to Mike Norvell and the staff for winning that game against LSU, because Brian Kelly coming in, bringing in a new staff, just a lot of new faces. LSU brought in a ton of different guys from the transfer portal, and you go into New Orleans, which is essentially which is essentially an LSU home game, and getting that win. And I think that's impressive. But again, it's a week 1 game. Both teams are unfamiliar with each other, and teams always improve, and both teams really did drastically improve as the season went on. I think both sides have merit. I mean, I think it was a great win for the ACC, but also both teams ended up being pretty comparable. So it wasn't like just a landmark win or anything, but it was definitely a quality win, and one of the more notable ones for the ACC.
Right, and also Georgia was obviously the number 1 team in the SEC. Tennessee and Alabama are 2nd and 3rd, but they lost to LSU, correct?
Alabama lost to LSU,
and Tennessee.
Yes. Tennessee got
lost to South Carolina.
They killed LSU.
Yeah. Tennessee beat LSU, lost to South Carolina and Georgia.
Right. Okay. So I mean, we could really kind of debate. Well, no, I guess you could say Tennessee was the 2nd best team in the SEC, if from an outsider's point of view.
If you care about power ratings, Alabama, the most metrics would tell you Alabama was still the 2nd best team in the conference, despite the 2 losses.
Right.
But it's always hard to compare those kind of things, even within the conference, because it's really, it's a 1-game result. It's not always indicative of who is the better team on a given day. It's just, I mean, it's always a crapshoot when you're trying to draw conclusions from a single game sample set. So, but Georgia was clearly the best team. Where you see them after, those teams afterward is up to decide to rank teams. Do you value those head-to-head results, or do you care about, who would you favor on a neutral field, all of that. So it's kind of a
right. And I think I might agree with you on Louisville, because I didn't watch any of their games. I would just watch some highlights and some scores, and they seem to have been a pretty decent team last year. So that probably is a pretty great sleeper team that you came up with. Or Cunningham's gone, isn't he?
Yeah, he is gone.
Yeah.
Finally, feels like he was again another guy. I'm not sad to see go. I know. I mean, lost to him, but he was close a couple times.
Right.
So.
I remember hearing about him Kenny Pickett's freshman year.
2017. Yikes.
Who is Pittsburgh's quarterback going to be this year?
Well, I mean, when you bring in a quarterback like Phil Jacoby from Boston College, you expect him to start. But if it was up to me, I would have the Penn State transfer Christian Vo start.
Okay, yeah, you guys should probably ask Oregon about Boston College departure quarterbacks.
And another person that was college forever.
Boston College had a horrible offensive line, and people.
Yeah, Jacoby can play.
Yeah, so Jacoby can play definitely if he has the offensive line to give him that time, which Boston College did that for him twice, freshman, sophomore year. Then he would, he can flourish, but he just doesn't have the talent around him. Now with Pitt, that's a different story. He's going to have talent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. No, I get it. Yeah. I mean, if you don't have somebody blocking for you or somebody to throw to, it doesn't matter if you're Tom Brady or not. I mean,
Tom Brady would just deflate the ball and then call it a catch.
Yeah.
Talk is Pitt. Are you handing out money to people in the chat? We've got Peninsula saying Pitt is the most underrated program in the country.
Nah. I think
it depends on what you're saying. Go ahead.
Let me. Okay, underrated? No. Disrespected? Yes. And let me explain the difference between those two. Pitt has done something that they haven't done since before I was even born. And that's win 20 games in a 2-year span since 80 and 81. 2021, we won 11 games. 2022, we won 9 games. And I know a lot of people had expectations that we could have won the ACC again, which we very well could have and should have, in my personal opinion. But with a quarterback as bad as Keaton Slovis, I'm actually surprised we even won as many games as we did. So do I think we are the most underrated team? No. Do I think we're underrated? Yes. I can name a dozen more teams off the top of my head that are way more underrated than Pitt. Way more. Duke is one of them. I think Duke is more underrated than Pitt. That's just the ACC. I think Tennessee deserves a little bit more credit than what they got. I could think of a few other teams.
I'm curious to see I know this is ACC, but that Texas Tech sure did seem to they might be a Big 12 sleeper next year. They look like they were putting something together there at Texas Tech in Lubbock.
Yeah. As long as they beat West Virginia, they'll have my respect.
Coming as a former Ute.
Speaking of that brings me up to a interesting conversation I had with a West Virginia fan and a Texas fan the other day. What if the ACC does disband and Pitt goes to the Big 12? Do you think that would be a fit? Because they're not going to the Big 10 with Penn State there. It ain't happening.
No, isn't Pitt a very high academic institution?
Yeah, pretty good.
Extremely.
Yeah, it's not that I have anything against the Big 12, but when it comes to academia, it seems like the Big 10, Pac-12, and ACC really take that stuff a lot more serious than the other two conferences. So
Yeah.
I think culturally, I don't see it, but I haven't followed the ACC that much. So
Yeah, I don't think that Penn State wants to let Pitt in the Big Ten.
Yeah, well, see, that's the problem. That's the reason why we're in the ACC. That's why I hate Penn State way more than West Virginia.
Yeah, Pitt academically is a pretty well, regarded school.
Oh yeah, it's extremely hard to get into Pitt. Extremely.
I had a friend that goes there. Well, I think she just graduated. So
Oh, nice.
Really, really smart. I was like, I think she was the only. I think like 20 or 30 people, 20 to 30 people from my high school applied there, and she was the only one that got in. So that's a tough school.
Wow.
Jordan, what do you think about Clemson being ranked lower than Florida State in the AP poll at the end of the year?
At the end of the year?
Yeah, I think they ranked Florida State. I'm gonna look it up. It wasn't one of the polls.
It's silly, but it's a product of the AP poll has always been, what have you done for me lately, and that kind of stuff, recency. I mean,
True.
Clemson beat Florida State on their home field and won the conference, but it is what it is. Florida State finished hotter. I can understand the reasoning. Florida State definitely looked better at the end of the year, but I don't know. I think you have to respect the results on the field too. Especially
Florida State was
beat them
11th and Clemson was 13th.
Yeah,
I said the same thing to Pitt fans about UCLA being ranked above us. I was like, it's not that we beat them. It's like, look at who they beat. Who did we beat?
That's what you get. But Clemson asked for it. I mean, that's what you get when you get beat by 3 scores in your bowl game. You're not going to get a lot of respect from the voters. So
I did not see that coming.
UCLA pretty much handled Washington and were up by 3 scores, I think, midway through the fourth quarter.
Mm-hmm.
Beat Utah and pretty much went wire to wire with USC. So UCLA was a pretty good team, but they went as DTR went, and if he had an off game, that's kind of where they ended up. But UCLA actually had a pretty good team.
Oh, they did. That's what makes
they just
beating
weren't
them
consistent.
Even better. That's what made beating UCLA great for Pitt, because I mean, UCLA got beat by a bunch of backups. Literally, we were down 11 starters that game. I love it.
Yeah, I didn't watch that game. Chip Kelly, I don't know. I don't know what it is with him in bowl games. While UCLA doesn't really get into bowl games, but anyway, the one year they make it, they all get COVID. So,
or they lose.
So I'm not. I mean, UCLA is just one of those teams that's just, they're really great, or they just stink it up. And, I like Will and Notre Dame. It's like, okay, you guys easily handled Notre Dame. I mean, and then you got beat by Stanford and almost got beat by Cal. I mean, that's just what's going on.
But wasn't Cal kind of decent this year?
No.
And I use that word loosely.
No.
Colorado's one win was Cal. So there you go.
Oh, wait, really?
Yeah.
No.
If that says anything.
Well, maybe Colorado's only win this year will be Jackson State. Sorry.
Well, Arizona's only win last year, the year before, was Cal.
Yeah.
So
Cal is everybody. When Cal is everybody's pick-me-up game. Yeah, and I hate it because I actually think Justin Wilcox he's a pretty competent head coach. I think there's a lot of barriers at Cal that it's in this day and age it's a really hard school to win at.
What conference is Arizona in?
Pac-12.
That's what I thought. I don't know too much about the West Coast team, so that's the only reason why I asked that question. Because
Understandable.
we don't travel out. I think the last West Coast team Pitt played besides UCLA would have been. I don't even know, actually.
There was a game in 2004 where Pitt went to Tempe, Arizona, and played a team that is now in the Pac-12, but they were in the Mountain West at that time.
Oh, the only memory I have of 2004 is when Pitt beat Texas A&M. That's the only game I can remember off the top of my head.
They were the first team to lose to a G5 in a BCS bowl game. Pitt was. Sorry to bring that up, but it was to my Utah Utes.
Oh, you guys played Stanford in the Sun Bowl in 2018.
Is Stanford in California?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
I thought they were in Indiana. I thought they were one of those schools that you think they're on the West Coast, but they're really somewhere else.
Marcus Pitt, if you keep this up, we're going to have to shut this channel down. You were like single-handedly going to shut our channel down. You don't know who's in the Pac-12. You don't know where Stanford is, and you don't know where Arizona is.
I know where
Arizona
is. Arizona's in Arizona. That's easy.
Sun Bowl. Is the Sun Bowl in Texas or Arizona?
Texas.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, man.
Hey, at least I know that.
All right.
Notre Dame had a good time in the Sun Bowl in 2010. That was a fun game.
Who'd you lose to?
We beat Miami.
They had.
Oh, okay. Well, you have my respect.
In the snow, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't there some snow in that game? Yeah.
Oh.
So has anybody talked about who Miami's going to get for a new offensive coordinator? Does anybody want to work with Cristobal?
Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
Yeah.
Oh, they can't afford him.
Yeah.
We will get
also
that on Wednesday and Thursday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be that'd be pretty tough. He has a lot of stuff going on, but and also he played defense when he went to Miami, so
yeah,
that would be an interesting hire. But no, this is a huge hire for Mario Cristobal because obviously Josh Gaddis did not work out at all. I think Miami only averaged 19 points a game on offense. That's pretty putrid. So he's got to get this right, and he fired Gaddis at a time where now a lot of the hot commodities, are off the board as far as offensive coordinator hires. So I mean, he's going to have to.
Well, he's going to have to compete with Nick Saban for that position as well. Am I right?
Yeah.
Isn't Nick looking for an OC?
Yeah, he interviewed Grubb from Washington. I think it was confirmed today. So. Washington had one of the most prolific passing offenses in the country, so it'll be.
They're going to be good this year too, 2023.
Oh
yeah, but I think that's Kalen. That's Kalen DeBoer.
That is, it is Kalen DeBoer.
He's a Jeff Tedford, isn't he? Jeff, part of the Jeff Tedford tree.
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay, and then Grubb would be off of one step down off of that tree, if I'm not mistaken.
But hey, the guy that works for the guy, I mean, I think there's sometimes a stigma around that, and I'm kind of saying that because Clemson just hired a guy that worked for the guy, but I think there's a stigma around them, and there's not really a track record of failure that some people like to say. I mean, a lot of times those hires work out. So.
Well, yeah, I think of the Stoops, one at Kentucky and one at Oklahoma. I'd say they were both pretty successful, and it comes from the same bloodline, not just the tree. So I could see where Clemson, they've got a good bloodline there as well as the tree. So going to be interesting to see if they get back into that dominant phase back. You guys have kind of not fallen off on recruiting, but comparatively you have, right? You guys were kind of in that top 5-6.
Not really.
No.
what years of windows you want to look at. If you want to just look at 2020 and 2021, those were the two highest classes in Clemson football history. They were third in 2020 and fifth in 2021. But if you look at the the recruiting classes under Dabo Swinney, I believe his average recruiting class is about 11th, and that's where Clemson. I think that so. I mean that Clemson has always been recruited in that 8 to 15 range. 2020 and 2021, you just won 2 national titles. Clemson had a lot of recruiting momentum, and they signed a big. They also Clemson traditionally doesn't sign large classes, which has also affected their recruiting rankings in the past too. So that's kind of something that's been a little bit different too. So it's Clemson is recruiting about the same as they always have been.
I think that's good enough for Clemson. So.
Yeah, is Syracuse going to go on a hot streak again, or no?
I doubt it.
No. No.
Does
if there's any moment,
someone want to take it out, and we'll bring in our next caller?
I'll take it out. Thanks for having me on, Mark.
Thanks, Will. Appreciate you being here, man. Thank you. We've got our buddy Luke, North Carolina fan. Luke, how's it going tonight?
What's up, Luke?
Welcome to the Voice of College Football.
What's up, guys?
Good to see
Not
you,
too
man.
much. Just checking out these ACC schedules. Now I found the ACC site has posted them all. So,
oh, good.
What do you have for us, Luke?
I was just confused about what Matt Brown was out here complaining about today in the press conference. He's talking about how unfair the schedule was for Carolina this year. It didn't look that bad to me.
We'll give it a look here.
Yeah, let's start with that since that seems to be the focal point of all social media.
So, North Carolina's got a game right out of the gate against South Carolina. Yeah. So I got to hand it to your football program here, scheduling 2 difficult Power 5 games. There's South Carolina and Minnesota, and then the Group of 5 game, App State. So that's strong.
Yeah, I mean it's strong, but we knew those games were happening. So I'm just really confused about what Matt Brown was complaining about.
Yeah, what is he complaining about?
I'm guessing it's the last 3 weeks of Duke at Clemson and at NC State, but I don't know what he expected.
It must be the Campbell game that he's concerned about.
Yeah, that might be it. Yeah, Campbell's had some good recruiting classes for an FCS school.
Campbell's never really been that bad of an FCS school.
They were bad for a couple of years there, but they're pretty solid now. But it's still Campbell.
Closing with 2 road games. I don't know what he's looking at there.
Is it because they're road games?
My guess would be it's because those are pretty much the 3 toughest conference games, and they're just all in a row at the end. But that's still not that crazy.
Yeah, I mean, you get at Clemson and at NC State is kind of a rough draw, but I mean it's not egregious.
It's not anything where you should be complaining about how unfair the ACC was in your press conference.
Yeah.
I mean, the network
hedging to me.
Does anybody believe the networks kind of dictate some of this schedule as far as, because they've got, ESPN has open windows here, and here. And so maybe the SEC is playing their top rated games through the middle. And so they try to pack on. ESPN might say, hey, to the ACC, can we get some of your top profile games at the end or at the beginning? Do you think that's a possibility?
Huh? I hope that's part of it.
Yeah,
they would be dumb not to. It's their. I mean, they have the rights for both conferences. You want to create the schedule and arrange it so that you get the most eyes and where it makes sense. So they certainly have their input and
right. So programs complaining about not getting enough money, but then having back to back tough games is like, well, if you want to make the money, this is where the networks want to pay us the most is if we can slot in here. So it's kind of like pick your poison, right?
Yeah, well, and the money thing is really just I mean, that's just intrinsic within the deal. A lot of it. I mean, what you end up making, and as we all know, the ACC has probably the worst TV deal in the entire Power Five, as far as
it's still better than the Big 12s, isn't it? Even their current one.
Well, the Big 12 is getting renegotiated here soon, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, no, they're locked.
They already did.
They're done. They just got to sign, and they're done.
Yeah,
as far as I know,
they already did their deal.
Well, the ACC doesn't renegotiate till 2031, so yeah.
By that time, nobody's going to care.
Yeah, that's the only reason half these teams are still in the conference.
Right.
There's no way out.
Yeah. Now, Jordan, is it true that ESPN invested a lot of money into building the ACC network? And that's part of the reason.
Oh, well, absolutely.
I hope it's not true because the ACC network is terrible.
It is. Well, it is true. They invested a lot of money. Both things are true. They invested a lot of money, and the product is lackluster at best a lot of the time. Yeah.
And I really can't explain that because, the same people are making the decisions and putting in the resources. But to compare the ACC network to the SEC network, it's not comparable.
It's depressing to look at. It's honestly a miracle that the ACC has actually, put two teams in the playoff. That's just it's hard to compete. And I know I sound like I'm complaining, but it is a frustrating thing if you're a fan of one of the teams that actually invests a lot of money in their football program. The Clemsons, the Florida States, North Carolina now. What's interesting? We talked about Duke earlier. Duke is really starting to invest in their football program right now. But you've got other schools. I didn't even mention Miami's investing a ton as well. The results haven't come yet, but they're investing. But then you have programs like Georgia Tech, who doesn't want to spend money on anything. Sorry, C-Dog. Shout out to you. I still love you, dog. But Georgia Tech is notorious. Especially they have been, especially the last few years.
Don't tell him that, Jordan.
Oh yeah, he won't believe it. But it's
don't tell him that. He might.
I mean, that's the reason why a lot of candidates, head coaching candidates for the Georgia Tech job, kind of backed out. Because I mean, they don't really invest a ton. The salary pool is not great. You don't have a whole lot of resources, and it's not like Georgia Tech is a broke institution. They have a lot of money. I feel like they could be doing a lot better than they are, but they don't for whatever reason. There's just not the investment. There's not the interest. And you're in a talent-rich state, and you're competing with a program that just won back-to-back national championships. I don't know. I guess it's you would think there would be a little bit more of a competitive drive, but I don't know. Georgia Tech used to care, at least.
I just think they don't care about sports anymore because all three of their big three sports aren't very good.
No.
I mean, their baseball team is solid, but other than that, their basketball team's the worst in the ACC, and their football team's borderline.
And the thing about baseball is you don't really need to invest a ton to be good at baseball. In that it's a different sport. I don't know. It's just you can recruit a lot different. It's the pitch is different, and especially since there's so much more variability in results in baseball. Anybody can pretty much be anybody in baseball. So, you can have a good season, every once in a while and, be okay without investing a whole ton. But football, basketball, the revenue sports, Georgia Tech, they just don't really seem to care. At least not anymore.
And then what about the Virginias? I mean, they've just fallen off the maps. They used to be really solid programs, and then as of late, they're just I mean, I don't know what's going on. They're just struggling.
You know, it's interesting because I think, and I know a lot of Tech alum, Tech grads, and you know, I'm friends with a lot of Tech people. They have a lot of different theories on because Virginia Tech is kind of the school that's always been the traditional football powerhouse, and they have not been able to kind of get out of the hole they're in, especially because they can't really recruit the state like they used to. They seem to blame the transition between Frank Beamer and Justin Fuente. I think really signified like a shift in their recruiting. I think when Fuente was hired, he tried to, you know, kind of branch out a little bit more. He started recruiting the state of Texas a lot of other places that Virginia Tech isn't traditionally known for, you know, recruiting very well. And the in-state kind of got neglected. Virginia's a pretty talented state. And you've got a lot of talent going to Penn State, the Big Ten. North Carolina is taking guys from Virginia. Clemson and SEC schools go into Virginia and get guys now, and so it's just a lot harder to recruit there. The DMV area in general used to be a Virginia Tech hotbed, and now it doesn't. Can't seem to keep that talent in state as much as they used to. I think they did a little bit of a better job this season. I think Brent Pry is trying to reestablish those relationships. They're in a bad way right now.
Oh, yeah. Didn't Caleb Williams come out of that area, out of the Beltway?
He came from the DMV, didn't he?
DMV,
Maryland or DC?
I think DC. Well, close to DC.
He went to Gonzaga High School. I don't know exactly where that is.
I think that is in DC.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought he was from DC. Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah, 10, 15 years ago, a guy like Caleb Williams, there was a decent shot he would end up at Virginia Tech.
Now, especially if Michael Vick was on his way out, right?
Michael Vick, Tyrod Taylor, they had some good quarterbacks.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's what I grew up with.
Logan Thomas, yeah.
That's a name I haven't said in a long time.
The Washington Commanders legend.
Good enough to have a decent tight end career in the NFL.
Yeah.
Logan Thomas.
I never thought he was very big when he played at Virginia Tech. I didn't realize how big he was until he was at Washington.
That's how quarterbacks tend to be. But yeah.
I don't think Marcus Vick does them any justice.
So I came in a little late, and what's the consensus on who got the toughest schedule in the ACC?
I don't know that we've really looked at them top to bottom to see.
Yeah,
Carolina might be up there.
Yeah, if you're going to include the non-conference, then Carolina's certainly there, and Clemson's always going to be there.
Yeah.
With Notre Dame and South Carolina on the non-conference. But, yeah, we haven't had a chance to really look at the conference scheduling.
So it's pretty consensus. It's North Carolina and Clemson have the overall toughest schedule.
Does Clemson play Pittsburgh?
I don't know.
No.
No. Pittsburgh, no.
No, not until next year.
Because they play Florida State and Carolina. I'm trying to think of the other top-tier ACC teams they play. Do they play Duke?
Well, Clemson plays every Carolina team. I don't know the last time that's happened, but Clemson.
There's a couple
of Duke on Monday.
Wake State, Carolina.
There's a couple of teams we don't play this year. I don't think we play Miami this year. I don't think we play Georgia Tech. I know there's somebody else that we normally play. Virginia, we don't play Virginia this year, which I don't get that at all. I love playing Virginia every year.
Well, they're not one of your three primary opponents, so you'll see them every other year.
No, Virginia Tech is. Virginia Tech, Boston College, and Syracuse. All
you just said
Big
Virginia.
East teams.
You just said somebody you're not seeing this year.
I meant, well, what I was talking about is teams we don't play, not teams we play.
Exactly.
Teams
So
we
if you're
played
not
last
playing
year
them
that we
this
don't
year,
play
you're
this
going to
year.
play them next year.
Right.
Yeah. Mine is
Florida
Clemson.
State. Yeah, I mean, Florida State's probably got to be up there because they played LSU and Florida in the non-con, and then they got Clemson, and it's a tough schedule. Southern Miss isn't a. I mean, they're not a.
They got to come up to Pittsburgh to play Pitt.
I don't know
At
how
Wake
tough
and at
Florida's
Pitt,
going to be this year with
back-to-back
Graham
week.
Mertz, though.
Oof.
Yeah, but rivalry game. I consider it.
Yeah, and it's in the swamp, so I guess that's all.
Who's even going to be their starting quarterback?
I mean, who else would it be?
Duke
Jack
at
Miller,
Wake at Pitt, and then home against Miami. That's not an easy stretch. If
So
Duke
how many
continues to be what they were last year, that's going to be tough.
How many teams does Florida State play that aren't Power 5 teams? They have 2.
Yes.
North
Okay.
Alabama
Miss
and
North
Southern.
Alabama.
Okay, and then Clemson has 10 or 11. Considering Notre Dame would be, we're going to call them a Power 5.
Well, Clemson plays Florida Atlantic and I'm blanking.
Well,
who's the other?
they always play like
other?
Furman
Charleston
or South
Southern.
Carolina State or something.
Charleston Southern.
Okay.
I knew it was a South Carolina school. they always play an in-state FCS. Although we haven't played Charleston Southern in a long time, so it's usually Furman or Wofford or the Citadel. So Charleston Southern, that's a nice change of pace, I guess.
At NC State, Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, North Carolina, at South Carolina is a pretty difficult stretch drive there.
Yeah.
I wish Pitt would play the other.
Huh. That's pretty tough down the stretch. They did manage to slide Georgia Tech though in between Notre Dame and North Carolina, so a little bit of a break.
It is nice that all three is 3 straight home games. So I mean,
that's a weird schedule.
I do have to say, Clemson and Florida State being played in Week 4 is so terrible. That game should not be played in September.
I don't know. I think it's great, and it's. I think that Clemson and Florida State have played since 2014, which, man, that 2014 game is still one of that was a frustrating game to lose. But anyway, I think it's a good. If you're the ACC, I think this is pretty good because these are at least your perceived top 2 teams in the conference, and if the goal is to get at least one of them into the playoff, I think this is the best thing to do. Because if you play it late, as I said earlier, the way the college football playoff work, the way they tend to rank, late losses tend to be, dinged more. So I think it gives the loser of this game a chance to, build their resume, build up some momentum into the ACC championship game, which is just assuming that. Obviously, that's an assumption that Clemson and Florida State are the top 2 teams in the conference, but
that might be what the ACC is doing, not wanting a rematch so soon after they had just played. And they're just assuming that Florida State will be in the conference championship.
Right. The only way it would be beneficial is if Florida State and Clemson both went into their championship game with, say, 1 loss. Winner advances depending on what the other conferences do. That would, that's beneficial. But like you said, Jordan, I believe that too, that they do look at later in the season, which I agree with, because as the season goes on, teams lose key guys that got them the wins. So a 2-loss team at the end may actually still be one of the best 5-6 teams in the country.
Yeah.
Even with, 2 losses, depending on if they got better and kept their roster, and some of the other teams, have fallen down, so to speak.
Yeah. I think of like I mean, 2017 Auburn is a great example of that. You know, they lose to Clemson and LSU early, and then they run through the rest of their schedule. They beat Georgia and Alabama, and they were number 2 in the. They would have made the playoff if they had won the SEC championship game. So yeah, I mean, the committee tends to award teams that, you know, kind of get better over the course of the year. So I think this is if you're the ACC, I think this makes sense.
Why do Duke and Northwestern play basically every year? They have basically decided that they are in the same conference or something.
It's the battle of the nerds.
A church partnership, I bet. It wouldn't surprise me.
That is not happening with any other two teams that don't play in the same conference anywhere, except for what we've seen out of the SEC and the ACC.
And I actually think Northwestern has only won one of those matchups. They've played
they've been the better team almost the entire
it.
time, but they have lost just about all those games.
That's
I think the one
really interesting
year Northwestern
rivalry they got going on there.
Was Northwestern going to even win a game next year?
Maybe they'll manage to beat Southern Illinois, unlike last year.
Yeah, they're not traveling to Ireland this year, so I don't know if they can win a game.
Yeah, that's
is Northwestern
and they're not playing Scott Frost either.
Yeah.
Yes.
Are they a team, Mark? Northwestern, are they a team that literally it takes them 2-3 years to develop their talent to reach their pinnacle? They're just not a team that has enough talent coming in every year to make a difference. Is that kind of
exactly
okay?
How they
have hit a rut.
Pat.
Yes, and he's done a phenomenal job overall. But man, they're in a rough way right now.
Yeah, they had to just miss on some guys because last year is usually the cycle or the year of the cycle in Northwestern where they win like 7 games. Then this year would be the year they win 10. Then they'd go back to 2.
I don't know. I mean, maybe this time it was a I don't know, a 3-year kind of or 3 or 4 year cycle, because I mean 2020 they went to the Big Ten championship game, gave Ohio State all they can handle. I mean, but yeah, it's been a rough past 2 seasons. So who knows? Maybe they're ready to cycle back up again. I don't know. This feels a little different though. They look really, really bad.
Yeah, it does. You know, they were cycling down with 4-8, 5-7 seasons, but 1-11 and 1 win in the conference twice in the last 3 years, and they're losing to Southern Illinois and Miami of Ohio.
Yeah.
Oh,
they're reaching Vanderbilt. Well, they've actually surpassed Vanderbilt standards because you know the Vanderbilt, you know, they hadn't had a conference win, and you know before this season they hadn't had one since 2018, 19. Yeah, they're kind of reaching that kind of territory right now. Shout out to Vanderbilt.
Now, if Northwestern continued this, would they ever consider firing Fitzgerald, or is he just there?
He does seem to be about the most secure coach in college football. You know, who else would survive 1 win in the conference 2 out of 3 years? But yeah, I have to think that there's there's going to be an end to. I know he's a favored son, of course. He's similar to Scott Frost in that he's one of the greatest players in the history of the program. But there has to be an end to the patience at some point.
Yeah.
This kind of seems like a Duke Cutcliffe situation, though, where they might just think they can't do better.
Yeah.
Well, is Northwestern a situation like Stanford with Shaw, like just being able to get admittance, get transfers in? You know, is that one of those universities? Because I know they're a very high academic university like Stanford, and it's just hard to get kids into the program to get admitted and transfers. Does Northwestern deal with some of that?
Well, sure. I mean, I'm sure. I don't know the inner workings of Northwestern, but so it's. I mean, they're one of the best schools in a pretty academically strong conference. So yeah, it's going to be hard to get guys in there.
just outside of winning currently, he checks every other box. He's a legend at this school. People like and respect him. He's respected across the nation. He's won as much as anybody since Ara Parsegan, going way back to the 50s and 60s. Yeah. So he's got a long leash.
Well, I mean, if he's recruiting, if his recruiting rankings are that of a group of 5 conference, but playing in the Big Ten, I don't know how you're going to expect him to have a lot of real decent seasons.
Has he ever recruited at like a high level at Northwestern though? I don't think he has.
No, I don't think so.
No.
And they've done
That's what I'm
just fine
saying.
before this.
It's like having a group of 5 roster playing in the Big Ten. They're just not going to be highly successful.
Their current rank is 54.
Yeah, so not great, and
that seems like a pretty normal Northwestern class.
Yeah, honestly, it's not horrible, especially for Northwestern. That's probably about where they always. But yeah, especially in the transfer portal era, I mean, if you're a school like Northwestern, it's really hard to develop talent, the talent you do get, because once they, once a bigger school, kind of locks onto them, it's like, oh, they have some pretty nice traits that we could use on this team, and they could boost their NFL draft stock. Well, then they're going to hit the portal. So Northwestern's kind of facing the issues that a lot of G5 schools are facing now. It's like you really can't. If you hit on a guy, he's not going to be staying there their entire career. More than likely, they're probably going to end up at Alabama or Georgia.
Northwestern actually lost 2 really great defensive guys, didn't they, to the portal?
And Joseph that ended up at Notre Dame, and I don't remember the other one.
Yeah, that's right. So Jordan's kind of correct in that. I remember hearing one of the top transfer portal guys came out of Northwestern on defense. And it was that Joseph kid. That's right.
Yeah. Brandon, he was really good.
They actually produced the only 2 first-round picks in the history of the school in the NFL draft 2 years ago. But I'm looking at their recruiting rankings.
About to have another 7
classes are all sitting between 48 and 58.
Yeah, that's about right.
That's bottom of the Power 5.
Close.
How many Power 5?
Boston College is pretty awful.
There are a bunch of Big 12.
They could be doing a lot worse, honestly.
Yeah, they could be. You're going to see Boston College and Wake with classes in the 60s and 70s.
Hey,
Wake is even lower than that this year, pretty sure.
Yeah, Wake Forest manages to get it a little bit, but I
don't know how they do it.
I don't
know. Their
recruiting
classes are awful.
Especially the talent they get at receiver. Like it's really strange. It was really strange this season watching Wake Forest and being like, as a Clemson fan, and being like, man, I'm jealous of Wake's receivers. I wish I had Wake's receivers.
They're still getting them too. Wesley Grimes is a really good player at Millbrook. He hasn't played yet.
Yeah,
he's in the Wake Forest system now. But they're still getting those guys.
They develop them like nobody else really. As far as I think they're the most. If you account for the school, they're a small private school. Like they have the smallest enrollment in the entire Power 5. They don't have a large alumni base. If you account for all of that, I think Wake Forest is probably the most overperforming program in the Power 5. They really should be a lot worse than they are, but I don't know how they do it. They have the longest bowl streak in the ACC, not named Clemson, and they're consistently solid. They're never terrible. They really have.
That sounds like a good video, Jordan. Overperforming and underperforming programs.
Yeah, that would be a really good one. You should. Yeah, I'd definitely watch that one.
Wake Forest versus Texas.
Okay. Oh,
that should be the thumbnail.
Exactly.
Oh,
I'm interested to see how
I'd
good
like to
Wake
play
Forest is
Texas
after
again.
Sam Hartman.
It's been a long time.
Virginia Tech. I don't know why they.
Yeah, Sam Hartman. Good.
I think Virginia Tech signed a deal to play Old Dominion like every single season for like the next 10 years.
Yeah, they did. They signed like a 9-year deal to play Old Dominion every year.
And I think it's a home and away thing or home and home thing. I think or something like that. But I don't know why you would want to travel to Old Dominion when they've beaten you. I don't know.
And of course they lost the first year of that series. It just had to happen.
That was brutal.
That was a brutal game to watch.
Yeah,
I do
And
like
it wasn't
the
like it
week
was.
2 game.
Wasn't like it was by 3 points.
Virginia Tech and Purdue is an interesting matchup.
Purdue.
I
Purdue
just
loves
like
to play
those
these
kind of
random
matchups
ACC
because everybody's hyper focused on the top 10 type of matchups, and these fly under the radar, but they're really good. Many times, very good college football games.
Yeah, Purdue Syracuse was fun last year.
Yeah,
That's what I said about. That's what I said about the Pitt and Cincinnati game this coming year.
Absolutely, that's a good
an
one.
interesting one for sure. Yeah, just the old Big East.
Rutgers and Virginia Tech is interesting too.
Yeah, that's going to be. I just know that's going to be a really ugly, awful football game to watch, but I'm gonna watch it anyway. That final score is going to be 13-12. Something.
Oh, excuse me. I'd like Pitt to play more Big Ten teams other than Penn State.
Yeah, you guys played Iowa home and home, what, about 6-7 years ago? But besides that, there hasn't been much.
That was it. Yeah, we split that series too.
But other than that,
I'd like to play Maryland.
Well, that series should be played. Pitt and Maryland. That's an old.
People are trying to accuse me of starting fake rivalries or rivalries that would never amount to anything, and I was like, it has nothing to do with Pitt and Maryland being a rival. It's just the fact that it's only like 5.5 hours from Pittsburgh to Maryland's campus. I don't see why we're not playing at least once every 3 years. I'd be okay with that.
Well, they used to play all the time in the 70s and 80s, back when all those teams in the East were independents.
Yeah.
Maryland should play more ACC teams at a conference to renew some old rivalries.
No, they're too good.
They should be in the ACC.
For the ACC now.
Yeah.
It was really interesting watching them play NC State in the bowl game. It was like a blast from the past. Except Maryland has truly become that was a defensive slugfest, like low scoring game. That's Big Ten football right there, and they positioned. So
Maryland doesn't really play Big Ten football usually, though. They did in that.
Not
game.
Usually, but they decided to do it that game.
Every team NC State played last year seemed to end up turning into a Big Ten team.
We've got Joey jumping in here. Joey, what's going on tonight?
What do you say, Mark? I had to come in. I've been sitting here like for 15 minutes just spinning my head about what Thomas Pitt said. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we want to hear from you. If it's spinning your head, I want to hear this.
Yeah, I'm spinning my head about what Thomas Pitt said. That's the West Virginia Pitt game.
I'm curious as to which one he said that's spinning your head.
Yeah.
Yeah, was it Stanford being in Indiana?
Stanford being in Indiana. That was
So Thomas Pitt, tell me again, West Virginia and Pitt won't matter. That's just a game.
Is he saying something anymore? Because I can't even hear him.
Well, I'm trying to figure out because from 1985 till 2012, you won 8 games. 8. From 1985 to 2012. And for 5 games in a row, we was beating you 45 to 13, 45 to 11.
I'm sorry, Joey. My apologies. I just want to get this clear. From what year to what year did Pitt win 8 games?
From 1985. I think it was 85
they
to
never
2012.
won more than 8 games. Yes. Okay. In a single season. I thought you were telling us that
No.
they won 8 games.
I think he's talking about beating
against West Virginia.
Yes. They never
They
did
only beat
better
West
than
Virginia 8 times.
for a long period of time. Yes. Go ahead. My apologies.
Yeah, they only beat West Virginia 8 times from 85 to 2012. And they beat us this year, now all of a sudden they are just wow. So tell me, Pitt, what are you talking about?
Talk is Pitt. You with us?
Am I the only one having problems? I'm here.
So if I can interpret for Joey, in case you didn't hear him, what I believe he is saying is basically, if you look at wins and winning percentage, there's not a big distinction between Pitt and West Virginia. And if anything, West Virginia's had the better football program over the past 30 or 35 years. So why would Pitt be looking down at West Virginia?
We're not even talking about West Virginia. That's how irrelevant they are.
We talk about them every Friday night on here.
Well, not me. Y'all talk about them. I don't. I mean, to be honest, you're not even a threat. West Virginia is not even a threat. You're like a gnat that just won't go away.
How in any way, I'm a neutral bystander in this. I have no fight in the game, no dog in the fight. How in the world, Talk is Pitt, can you talk about West Virginia's football program sitting at the place where Pitt football has operated for the last, pick your number of years?
Do you remember Walt Harris?
This is not an Alabama fan talking to a Kansas fan.
Pitt, do you remember Walt Harris?
Yeah, I remember Walt Harris.
Case in point, man.
Hey, it's still, you guys can try to throw whatever statistic. West Virginia's done this. West Virginia's done that. At the end of the day, to a Pitt fan, it's not going to matter what you do unless you beat us.
Oh, my goodness.
Well,
matter of fact, you guys didn't even make a bowl game.
How is West Virginia supposed to beat Pitt over the last 12 or 13 years when they didn't play?
Well, I mean, even though they didn't play, it's still going to take them another 25 years to even get anywhere near close to the amount of wins we have in a series. We have a 22-game lead in a series still.
I knew that was coming.
What is the series record in the last 20 or 25 meetings?
Last 20 or 25, I think West Virginia, it's in the favor of West Virginia.
18 and 20 and 18. It's either 18 and 9 or 20 and 9. It's one of them two.
In whose favor?
West Virginia.
Okay, that's exactly
West
my point.
Virginia's.
Well, that's just part of my point.
Well, I mean,
That's one of them.
You get tired of beating up on somebody for so long, eventually it just gets boring.
So it got boring for those 22-year-old kids to hear about the wins from 50 years ago.
I got to go on that one, guys. I just had to come in here, Mark. Didn't want to interrupt your ACC show, so I sat here and beat myself up for a while before I came in, but I had to come in.
Joey, I gladly will take up that fight for you. We appreciate you being here.
Y'all have a good day.
Later, Joey.
It's our guy, Joey. We've got a few more hanging in here. We want to keep these guys.
West Virginia still and will always be irrelevant.
Talk is Pitt. You've made that statement about 18 times, and we appreciate
Before you
being
bring
here.
somebody else on, Mark,
I love you being here, but you
quick.
have had nothing to back that up statistically, factually. All right, we're going to get some fresh blood in here. Does anyone want to jump off?
I can jump off.
I can
Mark.
jump off. Oh,
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
You bet.
Thanks, Larry.
Yeah.
Thanks, Gordon.
Later,
Appreciate you guys showing up. All right. We're going to bring on J Love, and we've got Chris from Spear Addicts showing up tonight. Welcome to the Voice of College Football, guys.
Appreciate it.
Good to have some ACC guys here
as
well to talk up. Now we've got representation from Pitt, North Carolina, Miami, and Florida State. So, Chris, your thoughts about the schedule release tonight?
Well, I'll be completely honest. I'm actually pretty happy that we're getting to play Clemson earlier in the year than we had been in the past couple of years. I think getting Clemson early is kind of a good thing, and it's important for Florida State. Maybe we won't have near the injuries when we play them. So, overall, I'm pretty excited for the schedule. I think our dark horse, who we got to watch out for, is Pitt out of anybody, because we got to go up there and play them.
Yeah, early in November. Weather shouldn't be that bad, but it's possible. J Love,
what's up, Mark?
What do you got for us tonight? What's going on? Appreciate you being here.
Oh my gosh, I'm depressed. This schedule.
Uh-oh.
Yes, this is a brutal schedule, but at least we get some good home games. For the past couple of years, we've been complaining that we get sorry home games. Well, we got exactly what we asked for. Oh my gosh. But this will be fun. This will be fun. And what the gentleman said before, Pitt has to be the favorite because of the schedule, how they're scheduled. They don't play us. They don't play Clemson. If they can handle their business against Florida State and North Carolina, they should be fine. That's my only issue. Like, whoever doesn't have to play the three of Clemson and Florida State and maybe Miami, well, if Miami does well, they're basically in the driver's seat.
That's kind of odd to see Miami showing up against Miami of Ohio on a Friday night to start the season.
Battle for the real Miami.
Yeah. That's Blake James for you.
You can't blow that one. Chris, I would definitely say in reviewing the 22 schedule, and I said it at the time before it was even played, that Florida State by far had the toughest schedule in the ACC, taking into consideration, obviously, the 2 non-conference games against the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you think Florida State falls on the level of difficulty? And also, how do you feel about the 3 primary opponents that Florida State was given last summer?
I would definitely agree with you. For last year, 2022 schedule for Florida State was by far the strongest. This year, I'm going to look at everyone's schedule before I state that exactly where we are, but I don't believe that we have the toughest schedule this year. We do have the 2 SEC out-of-conference opponents again with LSU and Florida. But with them taking the divisions away, it gave us the opportunity to play against, a couple of teams that we don't always get to see, like Virginia Tech. I'd rather play Virginia Tech than probably North Carolina, even though we haven't had a problem with North Carolina. But all in all, I'm pretty ecstatic about what we've got set up here. The only thing that worries me a little bit on this particular schedule is how close Miami and Florida are to each other. It's not that I don't think that we can win both games. It's the fact of high emotions coming off of the Miami game, because you have Miami, then it's North Alabama, which maybe you overlook them and something goofy could happen. But, directly after that, you're playing against the Gators. High emotion again for being that, that rivalry. So those 2 games being close would be my only argument, so to speak. And I'm glad that we have a little bit. I think that Duke could help strengthen that. Sounds crazy to say this, but Duke's actually helping strengthen our schedule with that win. Because I think Duke, before we get to, 1, 2, 3, 4, before we get to week 6, because it looks like week 5 we've got a bye. So by the time we get to week 6, I expect Duke to be ranked in the top 25. And I think that if we beat them, that gives us a better strength of argument.
All right. Luke, J-Love, do you guys have anything else to bring to the table?
Yeah. Oof. Miami. Let me ask you, Mark, what is your prediction when you look so far from Miami? Me, I got 5-7 again.
Okay, let me give it a look. I can find it here.
Man, Florida State. That Florida State schedule is crazy. Not only that, too, Pitt is going to be looking to try to knock them off also.
Yeah, so we've got Miami with a win out of the gate against Miami of Ohio. The Texas A&M games at home. We know how many issues the Aggies had last year. We were so geared up for that game all offseason, and they both turned out to win 5 games. Bethune-Cookman's an obvious win. Temple, that's maybe somewhat of a tricky game, but still should be a win. So let's say 3-1 at that point. And then we get into conference play. Georgia Tech, North Carolina, Clemson. I'm going to go with a 4th win there. Virginia makes 5. You're only going with 5 total wins?
Yeah, because that last 4 games.
Well, the closing stretch. I'm gonna notch it up to 6.
Oh man, yeah, the ACC hates us. They hate us.
Well, what are you looking at here that makes you think that the ACC hates you?
I mean, look at it.
Okay.
November, we're at North Carolina State, at Florida State, and then at Boston College. So Miami does not play well in the cold at all, and especially at BC, that's been a tricky game for us for the past decade. Also, oh my gosh.
Yeah, we'll see if they turn that BC game into an annual rivalry on the last weekend of the season. Since they're playing that on a Friday, that's what they usually do with those kind of some of those.
That would be Black
games.
Friday, wouldn't it?
Yeah, play a Black Friday game exactly. Maybe they're trying to stir up Doug Flutie type mojo.
Yeah. Well, like I said, we'll see. Mario has to put up or shut up on our end. We can't complain anymore. It's just we gotta come through, man, some way, somehow. I just don't see it. I'm not pretty amped up with how this schedule is. I mean, if it was an even playing field, it would be okay. But with how Pitt's schedule is set up, like, man, they're, in my opinion, they're in the driver's seat. Them and Virginia Tech, if Virginia Tech can find a way. But Jesus Christ.
Well, Virginia Tech's got an awful roster. They've got a long ways to go. So it doesn't really matter who they play at this point. They're digging out of a hole. And keep in mind, J-Love, that the top 2 teams make the ACC championship game. So this is not about winning the Coastal.
Yeah. That's what I was saying. That's what I'm saying. The strength of schedule means more than ever. So basically, if you can avoid playing Clemson, Florida State, and Miami, like if you can avoid playing 1 out of the 3 or even 2 out of the 3, in my opinion, you're in the driver's seat. And that's the situation Pitt is in.
Yeah, and Pitt's going to be in that situation a lot because they've got probably the 3 easiest primary opponents to play every year, along with Wake Forest.
Mark, did you have Miami beating Georgia Tech?
Well, I was just kind of grouping these games together. I didn't necessarily predict all of them. I just basically looked at those first 4. And J-Love, for as down as you are about this schedule, Texas A&M at home is a possible win.
Mm-hmm.
They could get off to a 4-0 start, but even let's say they lose that game and they're 3-1. Yeah, I was basically looking at Georgia Tech and Virginia as wins that take them to 5, and then one more win out of the last 4. But as J-Love points out, going to Boston College for as bad as they were last year is not going to be any breeze. Well, there might be a big breeze. It might be 21 degrees outside.
The only way we'll get that 6th, 7th win is if Florida State is just tapped out, because even them, that is brutal. This is brutal. Think about it. They have Pitt, us, and then Florida. And then they can't sleep on Wake Forest or Duke. So even for them, the last 6 games is going to be brutal. So that's the only way I see that we can fit the 6th or 7th win is if they're just tapped out.
Well, J Love, you have had some light schedules in the last few years.
Yeah. And we still haven't come through. Yeah, exactly. No more Kool-Aid for me this year. I promise. No more Kool-Aid.
Will Boston College really be in a position to take advantage of Miami playing in the cold, though?
Yes, they have the past, I think, 3 out of the 5 meetings, man. That's what's been killing us.
Well, this is a pretty bad Boston College team, and they were bad last year, and they're losing by far their best 2 players.
Yeah, that Friday night game, it's a toss-up. It's a toss-up.
I think you guys. I mean, to be honest, I think you could have a chance at Boston College. You could also have a pretty good shot at Virginia, in my opinion. I don't know if you've got yourself losing against Virginia, but it does depend on who y'all get as an offensive coordinator, seeing how y'all just got rid of Gaddis after 1 year. So depending on what scheme you put together, I mean, are we going to see Tyler Van Dyke that we saw last year? Or are we going to see him the last year of Lashley? So just depends on what y'all get, man. I want y'all to be good enough so if we do pull off beating you, that it actually matters more than just the Florida State Miami rival. So I'm rooting for you guys to get. I hope y'all are 6 and whatever it could be. Let's see, however many games. I prefer y'all to only have 1 loss when y'all see us. That would be great. I don't think it's going to happen, but that would be great.
Definitely. The issue is in that late part of the season. I mean, you guys were a perfect example. You gotta get that running game going, and that's been an issue for us, man. Especially with the offensive line. Whoever has the best running game, I know Mark already know this. Whoever has the best running game in November is going to take off, man. It's just simple as that, bro. That's my issue. I'm not worried about Van Dyke. I'm pretty sure, especially with the upgrade of our offensive line, is can we run the darn football? Excuse my language. That's what I'm saying, man. Like, let me ask you a question. With this schedule, is durability? Are you concerned about durability, especially with the back-to-back with this game? Sporadics?
For me, yes. Especially with J Trav not, he hasn't played 1 full season without some type of. He did pretty decent last year, but he still got injured in that. I forget what game we were playing in, but Louisville, and Rodemaker came in and pulled it off. But yeah, that's why I was saying those games being as close as they were, that worries me a little bit.
Oh my God, that's another thing that we need. So, Mark, you're a Big Ten. You're a Big Ten guy. Ohio,
I'm a national guy, J Love.
I'm a national
guy. I talk about everybody.
My apologies, bro. My apologies. I meant as an Ohio State, you feel me, fan. Like what advice would you give for us? Is durability has been the swing of things for the past 10, 15 years between Ohio State and Michigan with how the schedule is set up, or you don't think is that so?
Are you talking about advice in regards to building the program?
Yes, especially how it's going forward and how the schedule is set up.
I would say, number one, especially with his offensive coordinator position open, that Mario Cristobal, for as great of a recruiter as he is, and as I think the jury's still out on him as a program builder, he did a nice job at Oregon. He needs to put I know he has a supreme love for the power running game.
Yeah.
And the offensive line is the most important unit on the field generally. I get that. But he needs to become a little bit more flexible and go out there and get an offensive coordinator that's going to play to not necessarily this team's strengths, but going to play to Miami's recruiting base strengths. And that's speed in space. And that's Florida recruiting. and attract those kind of players.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, let's see. Well, let's see in 2 weeks. Let's see in 2 weeks. Jesus. My apologies. This is hectic, man. I'm excited.
Hey, love, we haven't even hit February. We don't want you to get stressed out here. Just enjoy it. Don't worry about it.
I'm just excited on how the schedule format is. I mean, I was picky about it, but this is exciting, man. This is exciting, man. Like I think everyone still has to find a way to earn it. I mean, there is going to be years like this one with Pitt, but I like it, man. What do you say about it, Sporadic? Like, are you satisfied with this? Like, is this more entertaining than it was before, or?
I do think it's more entertaining, to be completely honest. The only gripe that I have, so to say, y'all are probably, which that's not a terrible thing, but y'all are pretty much our only great home game, in my opinion. I don't necessarily like our home schedule. So being a season ticket holder, I don't like the fact that a lot of our home games aren't that great. But as far as opponent-wise, who we have on the entire schedule, I'm extremely pleased with it. I think it makes it more competitive.
Yeah.
I also think it gives like you said, I think everybody has to earn, has to have the opportunity to earn being the ACC champion at this point, because now it's, like y'all, for instance, y'all play Clemson as well. Let's say that y'all do good enough and you do only lose a game to Clemson. Well, if y'all only lose that game, y'all could play Clemson again in the ACC championship, because y'all might be the next best team. So I think it's cool on that aspect as well. One other thing that I want to touch on, there was a gentleman that asked in the chat, which I didn't see it until later. He asked what my prediction was for Florida State's year. I'm doing a show on my channel next Monday that I will predict the whole year. The reason everybody asked me that question, and I knew it was going to come, is because I predicted us to go 9-3 in the regular season. I only had one game messed up. So everybody's asked me for months now, what did I predict us to do for this year? So if you want to follow me and check out the show next Monday, me and Big Game James and Chip Westerly will also be on there, and we'll give y'all our predictions for the entire season.
Definitely. I'll definitely tune in. One more question, and in return, this is for both of you guys, and this is like for Pitt. This is theoretical. Let's say in the next 5-6 years, the strength of schedule plays a part where Miami, Florida State, Clemson beats up on each other, and there's always a team like Pitt that gets the uneven part of the schedule. Do you think a change needs to happen? Because how I'm looking at it, it's this is ridiculous. Like let's say in the next 4 or 5 years, the team that does not pull the two out of the big three, do you think it will be valid, or do you think changes will have to be made by then?
Well, I guess I'll jump in on this one. I think, Jay Love, that I think the conference, any conference, is trying to balance two things, a number of things, but two in particular when they put together a schedule. They want to create, they're just because they're going to draw the best TV ratings, the SEC isn't going to make Alabama play all the best teams in the league, and that's it. There has to be a balance. So they're going to protect the rivalries, which they've done. They are going to, number two, try to create scheduling balance to a certain degree.
Okay.
But they also want to highlight their best teams and their best possible matchups. So that's why they're guaranteeing, of course, Florida State and Miami are going to play. But even Clemson and Florida State, which years ago would not have been considered a rivalry, is going to be protected because for a large part of the last decade, they've been the two best teams, or one of them has been the best team in the conference. So they're also looking to make money and provide the networks with the best TV matchups.
True. Okay, that's a fact. Somebody just pointed out also the recruiting. If the recruiting doesn't match up, then there's no point of complaining. So yeah, that's true. Thank you. Well, thank you, man. I hope to see you guys soon. And Sporadics, I'm definitely going to give you a follow on YouTube, man. And thank you, Mark. Oh, Mark, is the Discord up already? I'm already a member, but I don't see the link for me to join the Discord. Do you have the Discord for your Patreon yet?
Absolutely. So How am I going to get that to you? I can post that on Patreon tonight.
Please,
I'll
please.
get you the link that so did your, well, I'm not going to get into it. So I will get you a new link that will work.
All right. Thank you guys so much. And you
Thanks,
guys
J-Love. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right.
Well, Mark, I'm pretty ecstatic about the entire ACC conference release. Really, I think they did it, and this is hard for me to say because I haven't been able to say it due to the Atlantic Coast and the Coastal being the way that it was. I always was worried that Miami was going to finally start winning games, and it was going to be really easy for them to be at the top of the list every year. But now that the divisions are gone, I'm actually pleased with what the ACC's done. I think they at least hit a triple. I don't know if it's a home run hit, but they at least hit a triple.
It's easy for all of us to poke a hole in the schedule because most fans get on here and they're just hyper focused on their team and they're not seeing the big picture. But if you try to create 3 primary opponents for every team in the conference, you're going to be able to do about 2/3 of it. And then you're just basically filling spots and trying to create decent balance. And you've got a number of things that you're thinking of, and it's not going to be ideal for everyone because some of these schools have been in this conference for so long. You could argue that they've got 4 and 5 and 6 rivals. For other schools, of course, Pitt, Syracuse are the last ones to join, and a few others, Louisville, that there are less ties that they have, and most of their ties go back to the Big East, of course. So there's a lot of factors and I think I really haven't gone through every school's 3 primary opponents to see if I could poke holes and switch it around to make it better. I doubt that I could because it looks to be fairly airtight. And again, with the old system, you wouldn't see teams for 6 to 7 years because of the rotation in the other division. Now you see everybody at least every other year. So definitely.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I know that the ACC has done away with divisions. Is the Big Ten doing away with them this year, or they wait until next year?
They will have divisions this year. I believe the reason that they didn't attack this year was they didn't want to restructure the whole league and then have to add USC and UCLA and have to redo it again the next year. So they are finishing out with their divisions this year, but they haven't released how they're going to approach 2024 and beyond. But the previous commissioner, Kevin Warren, who's stepping down to go to the Chicago Bears, he has basically stated there will not be divisions. Now, I don't know if that's him speaking forth, and now if there's a new commissioner coming in, there could be differences, but I would expect them to go in the same direction.
Yeah, I would think that it would be smart. I think that this new way of doing this new format makes things more interesting. Like you said, the old formats every, 6 years or so, you finally get to play everyone. And this way now it's every other year. So I think it makes it more exciting for college football. And see, I'm ultimately a Florida State fan. That's obvious. But it's this way I think that we can really figure out who the better teams are, no matter what. And if everyone went to this non-division, and as far as their conferences go, I think it would be the obvious 2 best SEC teams play each other. The obvious 2 Big Ten teams play each other. Same way with the ACC as well. But I'm really excited for the ACC to actually do something first. Being Florida State, I'm not a big conference fan because I'm an advocate for Florida State to end up in the Big Ten. That's what my hopes and dreams are. And I do see a pathway of that happening. But while we're still in the ACC, I think this is the best way for us to continue to move forward. And this is the best case scenario. Now, if the ACC could figure out how to pay us what the Big Ten pays their guys, we would stay.
Well, as you well know, Chris, from the time that Florida State joined the ACC, they dominated the conference. And then we got into the 2000s and Virginia Tech jumped in and Georgia Tech jumped in, and there was a pretty good mix of teams making the conference championship game. It was the same 3 to 4 to 5, but at least there was a mix of teams. And then, of course, Florida State took over with Jimbo Fisher during the EJ Manuel, 2012, 13, of course, winning a national championship, and they were the team. And Clemson was clearly the second best team. So for a few years there, you're looking at this Clemson Florida State game played in October and thinking that's the entire season, because they're going to blow through their schedules, and whoever wins that game is going to blow away whoever in the ACC championship game. And basically we saw a shift of power go from Florida State, of course, to Clemson. And in 2015, 16, even to a certain extent, 17, it was a decent game between the two. That Florida State was still the second best team in 2015 and 16, but Clemson just turned out to be the team. And we're still looking at one game and looking at an ACC championship game where you've got the likes of Virginia and Georgia Tech playing with 5 losses, Pitt playing with 5 losses. And now this just brings it into a better place where you're going to see the 2 best teams play in Charlotte, and you're going to see a more balanced schedule. Yep.
Well, I'll bring this up a little bit too, the conversation of how well the head coach at Duke's doing. Do you think Duke could be a surprise team in the ACC this year by any chance?
I haven't done a deep dive on Duke, but I got to say that I was extremely impressed. Not just that they went 9-4, but sometimes you'll see a really good coach grab a bad team and he'll be able to squeeze a 7-5 record out of them. But the 5 losses are ugly. Like when he's not able to coach them into a win, they don't have the talent and the wheels fall off, and the losses were really bad. And that's actually something I said about Florida State the last few years, was I was going to evaluate them as they started their upward climb, not just by what their final record was, but was this a good 8-4 where they were competitive in the 4 losses, or did they go out and beat 8 teams like Louisville and Boston College and beat the teams they're supposed to, and then they're not even close to Clemson and some other teams on the schedule? And I'd say the same thing with Duke. What impressed me the most is those 4 losses were all by 1 score. And I caught the 4th quarter of the North Carolina game, and they were that close to winning that game. And if they would have won that game, they would have been playing in the ACC championship game. And they got their quarterback back in Riley Leonard. So I haven't really looked at the personnel past him, but man, Mike Elko did a heck of a job.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I told a couple of the fans that were watching our show earlier, we went from 7:30 to 8:30, and James had stated that our dark horse on our schedule is Pitt, because we have to go to Pitt and play them. And I definitely agree that Pitt, for some reason, Florida State historically doesn't play Pitt great, except for the 13 season. 13, we took care of them fine. But other than that, they've always played us tough. And me seeing Duke play the way that they did last year, that's who my dark horse is, so to say. I think we have more depth and talent than they do, but I think they're very hungry and coached well enough that if we're not playing our A game, they could be a huge problem for Florida State, regardless if we're at home or not. So that's the reason why I asked you about Duke. But moving on to Miami, I mean, a little bit, if you don't mind me asking this question, do you have any idea or maybe a suggestion of who Miami should go after as an offensive coordinator? Because the gentleman that I told them I thought they should go after got picked up by the Chargers immediately after being let go at Dallas. And that was Kellen Moore. He was in the NFL, but I thought Miami might try to make that big move and go after a younger guy that could set up decent enough in college. But the Chargers picked him up really quick.
Yeah, and that's not a surprise. Kellen Moore was highly thought of in the NFL. I really don't have anybody off the top of my head. I don't know that Cliff Kingsbury would be a good match with Mario Cristobal, but he certainly would be a interesting choice, and he can certainly develop quarterbacks and he can scheme. But I don't know that he and Cristobal would mesh. Yeah, I really haven't given it much thought past that. That's a name that came to mind just now when you asked the question.
Well, and another one, I mean, they already made their offensive coordinator hire, and I think they did a really good job, even though they're our biggest opponent, in my opinion, in Clemson. But them hiring Garrett or Riley, what's his name?
Yeah.
Is it Garrett Riley?
Yeah.
With them hiring him, I think that was a good pickup. The only thing that I wonder is, are we going to see a TCU offense 2.0, or are we going to see something completely different with Dabo maybe implementing a little bit more of his style into what Garrett Riley does? Didn't know if you had any takes on that hire or what you think we see out of them.
Well, when I look at Big 12 offenses and the ACC, obviously the Big 12 has a big passing reputation. But if you look at the scores from the Big 12 over the past few years, that stereotype has kind of dwindled away. You wouldn't be able to tell Big 12 scores from SEC scores from Big 10 scores. The score of the conference championship game has been in the 20s for about 4 or 5 years in a row. So I don't see how that wouldn't necessarily be a match, or I do think Dabo looks ahead to, he's got a big picture look at Clemson as a playoff team and wants to build a tough-minded and offensive line-oriented team that can run the ball against better opponents in the playoffs. So I do think he would lean on Garrett Riley a little bit to say, we still want to stick to what we do and what made us what we are. We love all the gadgets and we want to be a high flying offense, but at the core, we still want to be, a strong team in terms of, running the football.
I'm not trying to come on your show and interview you, which it kind of seems like that's what I just did.
That's all right.
But the reason I asked is because I have a lot of similar outlooks, because I have to figure out a way to move my Florida State bias when I talk about other ACC teams, especially Clemson and Miami. And like I've told multiple fans that speak to me from Clemson or Miami, I want them to be good because it means more for us if we win those games. And also it's really good for college football. And that's the ultimate goal, is for college football to be at its best entertainment, which therefore means us, all of our teams at their best. The team that I guess that I'm wondering about the most is if, and this is switching complete gears, but in Ohio State, if Ohio State doesn't go as deep as they did this year, or maybe even farther by making it to the national championship, do you really feel like Ohio State's going to possibly move on from Ryan Day? Because I see a lot of fans they get really frustrated with almost getting there, almost winning it. And I know Ryan Day's won one, if I'm not mistaken, in 18, right? It was close maybe, but
he made it to a national championship game.
Made it.
Yeah.
I mean, do you as a Ohio State fan, do you feel like Ryan Day is the right guy as of now, or could you find someone better?
Well, for as much as Ohio State has extremely, extremely ridiculous standards and expectations for their team every year, and Ryan Day has even stated it, I understand I took this job knowing I have to win every game. And that's what's expected every year. That, he's not going to get fired for going 11-1. The only exception to that would be he could get fired just because of how much emphasis is put on the Michigan game. If he loses that, he could go 11-1 for the next 3 seasons. And if those are all Michigan losses, that would be the only scenario I could see where a guy's going 11-1 and going to get fired, because there is that much emphasis on that game. I think my only concern with Ryan Day, and I think he's doing a fine job, is that I think he runs the program a little bit more like an NFL team than a college football team. And I think maybe Urban Meyer got a little bit more fight and kick out of those guys. Just a thought.
Well, I definitely agree with you, because the only downfall that I mentioned to a really good friend of mine that's an Ohio State fan, I said if I had one thing to point out bad about Ryan Day is maybe Urban Meyer gets more out of his players than Ryan does, maybe, because there's no doubt that Urban Meyer definitely, those guys would run through brick walls for him. And also when he went to Florida, the same thing. He just couldn't figure it out in the NFL for some reason. But I think Ryan Day is a really good coach, and I think that I personally think he wins a national title at Ohio State soon. I think that Ohio State was this close this year. Other than losing to Michigan, what was the red light? I think that was the only one. But I do agree it'd be the same thing at Florida State. I think if Norvell loses to Florida or Miami 2 or 3 years in a row, and that being the only game they lose, I could still see that it being a possibility of, okay, well, we're not losing to Miami anymore, or we're not losing to Florida anymore. And that would take 3 or 4 years in a row. But I think Ron Day is a really good coach. I think he's putting together a great program. I think he does it the right way, where I like how transparent he is with the NIL part. I like how transparent he is with what he's doing with his program. I think Norvell is actually a very similar coach to Ryan Day. Doesn't have the resume yet, but I think he coaches in a very similar style. That's why I think you yourself and others, like Ohio State fans I've talked to, they actually like Norvell. And I think the reason why is because he kind of mirrors Ryan Day. He looks a lot like him. And that's why I'm satisfied with Mike Norvell being the head football coach at Florida State, because I see a lot of the great credits and similarities, I think, is there. So I appreciate you letting me come on. If you got any questions for me before I go, ask away. If not, I appreciate you letting me come on again.
I just want everyone to know where they can find you. They can see it there on the banner at Spear Addicts, and you can tell them a little bit about what you do and, again, where you guys are located.
Yes, sir. Well, you can find me at Spear Addicts, whether that be Twitter, Instagram, or on YouTube. We talk about Florida State substantially, mostly football. We're probably the most positive Florida State page, so to speak, or fan page that there is. To be part of the Facebook group, you actually have to follow a criteria. If we're going to hold our players and coaches to a standard, then I believe that the fan base should be held to a standard, which means that we have intelligent conversations about how we fix the things that are wrong at Florida State, that we don't just bash and talk bad about, or just for ignorant reasons say the wrong thing. So you can find me at Spear Addicts at any of the platforms that you follow. We also have a Discord at Spear Addicts as well. If you become a member on YouTube, you get the Discord for free. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Mark, appreciate you having me on again. And if you ever need anything from me, let me know.
Appreciate it, Chris. Night. Thanks for jumping in the conversation. Thank you so much. Chris Frazier, Spear Addicts. We had a conversation the other day and posted those videos on our Florida State channel. Also, keep in mind, I just dropped the link in the chat. You can check out Michigan's latest hype video. Not that I care that you would normally check out Michigan's latest hype video, but somebody brought it to my attention. Malachi, thank you so much for doing that this afternoon. That Michigan's latest hype video on Instagram, and they've got like 600,000 followers there. That there's a familiar voice that they put on their hype video there from Michigan. So check that out. I left the link in the chat. Also, we're coming up at 11 o'clock Eastern Time, 8 Pacific with our USC show. We took a week off, and we're back at it with Matt Zemek from Trojans Wire again. That's coming up at 8 Pacific Time, 11 Eastern over on the USC channel. Appreciate all of you being here. Somebody left it in the chat that the Big 12 schedule release, which I'm on record as saying is, to me, the most interesting and intriguing schedule release for a number of reasons I've outlined, that that is being released Tuesday at 2 Eastern. So I'm going to verify that. And if, in fact, that is correct, that the Big 12 is releasing its schedule at 2 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday, well, guess what? We'll be here live, and we'll deliver it ourselves and analyze what is the most interesting and intriguing and strangest schedule release out of all 5 conferences, out of all 10 conferences, because you've got the integration of BYU, Houston, Cincinnati, and UCF into the Big 12. Are they going to stick it to Oklahoma and Texas? What are they going to do? How many times are they going to match up Oklahoma and Texas against the 4 newbies? How are they going to integrate Houston and align them with the other Texas schools? I have a lot of intrigue and a lot of questions concerning the Big 12 schedule. And again, we're going to verify that that's going to be released Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Appreciate you all being here. And Tim reminding everyone to please hit the like button on your way out. It just helps us build the channel here at the Voice of College Football. And I'm going to release some schedule previews as we march on. And also, Jordan tonight gave me a really good idea on doing under and overperforming programs. Right here at the Voice of College Football. We'll see you in a few hours over on the USC channel at 11 Eastern Time for USC Live. See you then.